Hello and welcome to the Dee Code. We are going to be talking about scrying and trance. If you don't know what the Dee Code is or who John Dee is, please check out the introductory video in this series. Go to deecode.org to join the e-course. So, scrying is a magical practice of looking into a crystal ball, cup of water, etc. It involves trance, which is an altered state of consciousness, and it oftentimes involves the direction of the trance state through hypnotic or shamanic mechanisms. This might be a questioner, like a hypnotist questioning. It might be magical rituals or something like that. It is generally understood to produce psychic communication, aka channeled material. So there are many claims about psychic material and channeled material, including that it's completely true, that we need to believe all the predictions, but actually it is generally understood to produce non-veridical, that means it's non-verifiable information, right? These predictions of end of the world don't come to pass, that sort of thing. Even in the case of one of the fundamental scrying actions of John Dee, he gets a lot of false stuff all the time. So it's really important to know that. Doesn't mean it's meaningless, right? So we're practicing multiple dimensions of meaning here, understanding that objective truth is one of many different domains of meaning. It's important to know that all of this communication appears to be filtered through the channel's psyche. So the psyche of the person receiving the communication impacts it. So here we have people sometimes that say they're clear channels. They don't read any books because they don't want to influence the channel, that sort of thing. I say that's false, actually. It's in the same way because the communications clearly use what the concepts and minds and words that are in the channel's psyche. They use them. They tell me when I channel that they are very grateful for my literary passions and things like that. So that's really important to understand, right? And it's important to understand that there is historic precedent. That doesn't mean because they're using your mind or words, doesn't mean it's not true, right? It doesn't mean that you're not talking to something. It just means that they're talking to you through your mind. And that's totally fine. These things are meaningful like dreams. And it's really important to know that dreams are real, that because of some of the anomalous dream enigmas, we can understand dreams to be telepathic, shared, have the capacity to actually produce things in the waking world, that dreams are not just limited to nocturnal hallucinations, but can happen in the day. And there's an image here, there's a magic mirror, the black disc that sort of looks like a cast iron pan. Underneath that here, we have a crystal ball. This crystal ball was said to be received by John Dee from the Archangel Uriel. So in this way, this is an image of what may actually be termed an apport, or perhaps even, in my theory, a dream apport. All right, so let's talk about Dee's method. So Dee's method of scrying may not have involved what we now term Enochian Magic. It's also important to note Dee used several scryers, not just Edward Kelley. He received a magic disc, or the magic crystal ball. Edward Kelley came into his life, but he was engaged in this before, during, and after his interaction with Edward Kelley. Dee's method itself involved prayer and cleansing ritual. They sort of like waited around until Edward Kelley started to see things that might be like 15 minutes of waiting in prayer after several hours of cleansing and prayer rituals. And then they engaged in what's like a hypnotic-like conversation. So check out some of the quantum healing hypnosis technique videos, QHHT videos online. You'll see what this sort of communication feels and looks like. That's a really important, relevant connection point, because this isn't a unique phenomenon that we are studying. There's a context before, during, and after John Dee's work. It's very confused in the West because we don't know what hypnosis is. We think of it as mesmerism. We always want to reduce things down to objective truth, and really that's not the point. So we've got a lot of unconscious patterns around what this work is. All right. I want to read you a passage from John Dee's 5 Books of Mystery. This comes from Peterson's book. It is wonderful. I would say if you're into this work, go right now and buy this book or engage with this in some way, because this is a source book for you. So this is more or less a transliteration of what's in his spirit diaries, and I just wanted you to have the flavor of this. So he's at Mortlake, which is his home in the south of London, and this happened in 1582. About 11 in the morning, it looks like, on a Saturday. So Dee says, one Mr. Edward Talbot came to my house, and that Talbot is actually Edward Kelley, and there was some confusion around the name. And he, being willing and desirous to see or show some things in spiritual practice, would have me had to have done something therein, and I truly excuse myself therein, as not in the vulgarly accounted magic, neither studied or exercised, but confess myself long time to have been desirous to have help in my philosophical studies through the company and information of the blessed angels of God, and thereupon I brought forth to him my stone in the frame. So here's the kind of frame that he would hold the show stone. It looks like, I mean, it seems to me that that would be the crystal ball, actually, which was given me of a friend. I said unto him that I was credibly informed that to it, after a sort, were answerable Alki Angeli Bonum. So that is like answerable. The good angels were answerable to that stone. So it's sort of like the stone has power over like Archangel Michael, that sort of thing. And also that I was once willed by a scryer to call for the good angel Anchor to appear in that stone to my own sight. And therefore I desired him to call him, and if he would, Anachor and Anlios alike accounted good angels, for I was not prepared thereunto, etc. He then settled himself to the action, and on his knees at my desk, setting the stone before him, fell to prayer and entreaty, etc. In the mean space I, in my oratory, did pray and make motion to God and his good creatures for the furthering of this action. And within 1/4 of an hour or less, he had sight of one in the stone, but he still expected for 2 more, deeming this to be one of the 3, namely Anchor, Anachor, and Leos. But I came to him to the stone. But I then came to him to the stone, and after some thanks to God and welcome to the good creature used, I required to know his name. And he spake plainly to the hearing of Edward Talbot, E.T., that his name is Uriel. So Dee says, are you one of them, say I, John Dee, that are answerable upon due observations performed to this stone? Uriel says, I am. Dee says, are there any more besides you? Uriel says, Michael and Raphael, but Michael est principes in operibus nostris. There's Latin here. I don't know much Latin. I prefer Greek. But he says, are there, and then, so get to the translations there. I would guess that's, Michael is in charge of our work. So Dee says, is my book of Soiga of any excellency? So this is really important. This is such a key moment, and we'll talk about this in the precedents for cryptographic texts. Uriel says, Latin phrase, Dee says, will you give me any instructions? How may I read those tables? And Uriel says, I can. Michael is going to help you interpret the book. Dee says, I was told that I could read that book. I should live but 2.5 years. And then Uriel says, thou shalt live 100 and odd years. So this is a really interesting interaction because it clearly shows capacity to interpret the Book of Soiga. We've actually decoded that modern times cryptographically, so we can talk about that in the future. But then there was this interaction. Should I might die if I read this book because it's a magic book. Will I die? And Uriel says, no. You will live 100 and so years, which was false. So that's really important to acknowledge. All right, basic observations regarding trance. Trance and altered states are consciously utilized for community benefit in 90% of Earth's cultures, which are distinguished as polyphasic. We live in a monophasic culture, which instead of honoring the psychical reality of dreams and dreamlike experiences through community-based rituals, we persecute people through genocide and more or less murder, which has been a horrible history, and we need to get out of that. Trance and altered states are natural and universal, and so it may actually be a fundamental human technology rather than a weird thing that happens to weird people. Scrying is psychic or psychical, meaning that it relates to the psyche or mind. This is not a physical action, this is a psychical action. So we can understand that the information may have some psychical implication. And I'm using the word psychical in order to tie this inquiry into the work of Carl Jung, who is famous in this, and you should read his work if you don't know about it. The focus on veridical testimonies may be a modern Enlightenment idea. For example, we can consider dramatic oracles. In the past, right, we would receive oracles like the oracle at Delphi that have really these puzzles. Who knows what it means? And it's not an actual do this, do that, this thing happened. It's sort of a work of art, a specific work of art that inspires action. And so that's really what I see this as, not necessarily as a schematic for cryptography, a schematic for God knows what, right? And then finally, psionic or psychic communications generally produce meaningful visionary testimonies, complex and irrational experiences, and both non-veridical and veridical predictions. So that means everything requires discernment and participation to make sense of. I want to talk a little bit about scrying as hypnosis. So the Dee and Kelley interaction seems to me like hypnosis, particularly like the QHHT or beyond quantum healing methods put forward by Dolores Cannon or Candace Craw Goldman. So check those out. That is a really strong modern precedent, modern way to understand what happened back then. Hypnosis is centered on dyadic consciousness, aka one person questions, the other person experiences. This seems to be non-dual in nature, meaning it happens between the people. Dr. John Mack talks about the non-dual nature of hypnosis. Dee and Kelley basically understand themselves to telepathically have mind share. There is of one mind when they are doing the actions. The work of scrying involves directed trance, involves fixed eye inductions, which are hypnotic in nature. The scrying sessions vary by scryer. Please see the controversies regarding Edward Kelley. The interactions include angelic and celestial beings. There are qualities of surprise within the communications. There are expressions of glossolalia, which we now call light language in the context of quantum healing, but these are similar phenomena that happen. They prevent contradictory and non-veridical information and predictions, and they also produce veridical predictions as well, which require your discernment. And then finally, it produces personally and culturally meaningful experiences despite the non-veridical nature of these experiences. For example, we have like 3,500 QHHT practitioners sort of listed in a professional directory, all of which are performing something like regression hypnosis in service to either past life understanding or ET contact or non-human intelligence contact, all of which produces sort of testimonies regarding these things. All of those testimonies are understood by consensus science to be not necessarily historic, right? So we understand that hypnosis produces irrational and non-verifiable information. But all these people go to them, and no one's lying to them. No one's saying really like these are actually like past lives or this is actually happening. Most people say we don't know. So that's really important to acknowledge. Hypnosis and scrying may be misidentified shamanic dream work. because it deals with real but often dreamlike entities, produces dreamlike visionary states, involves control of the dreamlike states and interpretation, and produces meaningful visionary testimony, complex irrational experiences, and non-veridical and veridical predictions. These are all qualities associated with shamanic dreamwork. And so if you want to know more, please do check out the paper, What Can We Learn from Shamanic Dreaming by Laughlin and Rock, published in the in APA Journal in 2014. So that's a wonderful resource. We need to talk about paradoxes associated with trance because it defies the rational mind. These are non-dual in nature. These are non-dual actions. We talked about how Dee and Kelley were of one mind. This is the subject-object duality. It's non-dual. That doesn't exist in the same way here. Same thing with true and false, hoaxed or authentic. There's something else happening that is beyond these dualities. That means all of this communication, all of this endeavor, all of this inquiry is meaningful but non-objective, but sometimes can be objectively verifiable. Using imagination is the key. It is not problematic. That's the key with trance, with hypnosis, with dream work, is using the imagination. In the West, we say, hey, it's just an imagination. That is persecution from monophasic cultures. That's a monophasic bias. Actually, you go to the polyphasic cultures, they say, hey, imagination is key. So let's just use our imagination here. The model of the clear channel may actually be wrong, just straight up wrong. A lot of people suggest that in order to be a good channel for angels or ETs, you need to not influence your mind. So this is when someone has a UFO sighting, they go, oh, don't read about UFO sightings because when you go to your hypnotist, they'll ask you some questions and you don't want to reply back from science fiction versus whatever else. Actually, the mind is so complex that we can't really control it in that way, that language happens, that communications happen at telepathic and collective unconscious levels, not just conscious levels. So I say let's use our conscious mind to support these unconscious or supraconscious processes, right? In this way, a lot of people get freaked out when we talk about Enochian magic as having actual precedent, historic precedent. Right? We like to think the angels blasted all this complex information down to Dee and Kelley and that they were sort of stupid humans that clearly received it. Actually, you look at the material received, it has more precedent with historic cryptographic texts than actual angel communications as understood through Christian literature. There's more precedent that is cryptographic than angelic communication. Not saying it's either or both, right? We're leaving that open. There's something like a trance uncertainty principle that's really important to acknowledge. It is impossible to know all things about trance material, like it's impossible to know the position and velocity of a particle, right? So we can know some things about it, but not all. And that is something that we will just work with forever, right? So it is really important to use your own discernment and imagination. The point here might be not a rational understanding at all. It might be something else. All right. I want to talk about the historic timeline involved with the scrying work of Dee and Kelley. 1527, Dee was born. 1564, he wrote the Monas Hieroglyphica, which is an alchemical encoded text. 1582, he met Edward Kelley, like we talked about. From there, he performed scrying actions for a few years to receive what we understand as the 5 books of mystery, elemental tables, and so on. In 1583, he wrote the De Heptarchia Mystica, which is a central text to this Dee Code. 1588, he compiled that once again into the compendium Heptarchia. 1589, Dee and Kelley break up. And in 1608 or 9, Dee dies. So that's sort of the timeline of the communications. I want to invite you to action. So this time, practice some mindfulness. Pay attention to your dreams. Dream journaling is great, and Dreamwell is a great place to practice mindfulness and pay attention to your dreams. You can get there through dreamwellbewell.com or go to an app store and type in Dreamwell. It's a mobile app. I'm Chief Dream Officer. And it's the best way to, I know, to learn mindfulness in the context of dream practices and things like this. You can learn more about Hypnosis, Dreamwork, and NHI contact through D-SETI.org. And then finally, join the e-course if you're not already on Dee Code.org. We'll have guided meditations, deep dives into the topics, practice videos, and Q&A. And so now this is more of the promo section of this video. You can skip to the next one if you are doing the course or lecture series. Decode.org has information, video, and content related to the codes within Dee's work. CosmicDreamSanctuary.org offers my dream work and hypnosis practice based on Western and mindfulness traditions. D-SETI.org offers a hypothesis that hypnosis and service, the ET contact, is misidentified shamanic dreamwork. Offers training and dreamwork sessions related to ET, NHI contact, and extraordinary experiences. Finally, Dreamwell, dreamwellbewell.com, or on the app stores is the mobile app to help you sleep, dream, and be well. It offers mindfulness training, dream journal, and guided meditation. So once again, thank you for being with me on this journey. Thank you for considering Scrying. It might seem extraordinary to you, it might not, and in any case, I want to invite you to use your imagination, to know that your imagination, as it is right now, the imagination that's thought up crazy adventures when you were a kid, the imagination that comes up with silly puns, the imagination that's that creates the vast world of your dreams. This is the key to the Dee Code. There is no amount of rational, computational, linguistic experience that will solve this without the engagement of imagination. And it is not just imagination in general. It is your imagination. It is my imagination. It is whoever's listening to this imagination. It is the contents of that imagination as it is right now in this moment. That is the key. That is the gateway to these deeper realms and experiences. It is the same imagination that your conscious mind will say, I'm just making this up. I'm just making this up. This is unreal. It is that imagination. You are directly connected with it right now, and there is nothing you really need to do, because this is a universal human technology. And we have some issues around of wounding, of monophasic cultures, of being persecuted, of the biases, but those just happen up here. Those just happen up there in the mind and concept. You're actually engaged with imagination in a way that is complete and whole and sufficient to do this work. So thank you for being connected in that way.